Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review the Survivalist 2021. So, I had seen another movie called The Survivalist before, and then once kind of hearing about this movie, because I went through the trailer and saw it, I was like, okay, this movie may be interesting. So, and plus, I've seen a movie called The Survivalist before, which is kind of riddled with sex scenes, and like that movie was interesting enough. And so, when going into this movie, I was kind of like thinking, like, well, maybe we can get some kind of interesting story here or whatever. But it seems like they really just tie on to the fact to just kind of have a movie kind of being placed of what's really just going on right now with the whole having there be like another sickness out that is to be much more extreme, using the Cove Delta thing that's going on right now as a way to write a film, which I'm like, that is really just lazy writing. But it's just another post-apocalyptic film where everybody's scavenging to try and eventually get to one girl who's to be Sarah, who is to be immune from this brand new sickness. I'm like, these John Malkovich and his men are wanting to take this woman to breed with her, so that way she can pop out babies that are supposedly immune to this brand new sickness. And I just find this movie fairly illogical about that whole thing, because I'm like, so if she is immune to this sickness, just wait for the brand new spanking new Cove 19 red flavor frickin', and like eventually they won't be immune to that sickness, whatever babies she ends up popping out. So there's just going to be some new thing that is eventually going to be the newest, latest illness, and eventually just will wipe more people out. It's bound to happen. How many times have we gotten like a more and more horrific case of colds or flus or whichever, and swine flus and all kinds of bird flus and all kinds of stuff that are to eventually wipe us out in large sum numbers, which eventually people will have like these bizarrish conspiracy theories about all this stuff, which I can understand. So, going on into this film, I would say that this movie really has to latch on or tie on to certain veteran actors kind of doing the best they can with this film. There's not a lot of real estate in this film, as it seems to be in the trailer. They kind of go into certain areas, but most of the focus is on this character, Ben's farm, who is to be Jonathan Myers, who we end up seeing right here. A lot of people will probably know John Myers from like Tudors, or probably a lot of people will probably also kind of know him for any kind of random thing that eventually ends up doing, like From Paris with Love, or possibly like I remember him doing a series Dracula at one point, stuff about light bulbs and stuff like that. It was weird, but I enjoyed it. John Malkovich is to usually either play an a-hole in a movie or a villain in the movie. It kind of seems like in this movie he's just playing the villain. Really, like it kind of feels like this performance is very familiar to his Warm Bodies kind of performance, so it doesn't really feel like he's bringing anything unique enough to the table here. Hilariously enough, and I wanna confirm this also. Let me pause here for a second. I want to confirm this actor. Well, I guess I was wrong. I thought there was one character from a specific kind of movie where it's like, oh, okay, if you're gonna have a go-to post-apocalyptic movie, you might as well go with him. But I guess when really looking into IMDb, he wasn't the actual guy. He was somebody different. I was like, oh, looks like the exact same guy. But anyways, so let's just go into this movie. Let's break it down. So I would say that this movie probably has to be like a kind of smidgen okay film at best. Really, some people won't probably enjoy this movie. Some people will think that it's like a stretched out film where like they take a lot of time. Um, they take their like sweet but took his time in certain areas. There's not a lot going on in this movie besides like us getting to know certain characters or having this long-winded dialogue between two characters like uh, both Ben and Aaron, who are Jonathan Myers and John Malkovich's character, or we just end up having both Ben and his father, who is to be Heath, who are having quite a bit of dialogue together, eventually kind of mentioning about things of their past. Supposedly Heath is to have like this gambling problem, and we also seemingly have the radio operator that comes in from time to time and gives us some horrific update or just some update of what's kind of going on in the world until eventually she is to slowly but surely just start to lose people that are to um, be working at her radio station, to where she's just like, well, I guess I'm just like by myself right now. Like, it's like I'll just try to keep figuring things out and we'll just keep going along here. And so she ends up at first, like, or she ends up at, towards the end, like, she completely is just like, instead of mentioning like her radio station, she's like, you know what? I'm just gonna mention my name and like get the heck out of here, because like who cares? So, because the world is going to heck anyways. So, so going in here, let's just go into spoiler time, because really it's either people may be interested or maybe not. Justifyingly, it's just a squeak okay. It's really just another one of these like survival movies. So if you just like the genre of things, where can you watch this movie for absolutely free besides the pay scale stuff that evidently is presented right now? I think if you went into Amazon, you'd probably be paying for whatever. You can go onto an app called Fox HD Movies. You can go onto Google Play and go out of your way to search for the word Fox HD Movies. You find a logo on an app that'll say so, but not the actual title. The title will be something different. So go ahead and watch this movie for absolutely free without no fees, and then eventually you can decide whether or not how long you want to invest in that film. But with that said, yeah, it's about time to go into that double five time territory. So it is spoiler time, spoiler time. It's about that time getting to spoil who this mahoo the he. So, so let's kind of do the breakdown in this film. So it seems that there is to be this one girl who is to be Sarah, who is to seemingly be immune from this new COVID-19 Delta sickness, and so her and this guy who is to be Guy Hodges, I think, is to be running around just trying to scavenge for food, and Guy is to mention that he knows a friend who's to be of a part of the FBI that he thinks that she can be able to hide out with, and they can easily be able to survive with one another. While all of a sudden Aaron, who is John Malkovich, and his group are kind of hunting these characters down, because Aaron was to be a survivor of COVID-19 Delta, and so and miraculously he seems to have been the only one. So eventually the radio personality eventually mentions that it's like, wow, we actually have a survivor of this illness. Like, man, that seems like one in a million shot. Like, I don't know if this is true or not, but like that's the story we've been hearing. So because we just kind of show him like on his deathbed, and he ends up just kind of waking up and is like, yeah, I'm cured of this, and they're like, oh my god, he is cured. Oh my god. So now he, excuse me. So now Aaron is on his way with a group of other individuals that are trying to find this immune woman because they had heard about this story, so they're trying to track her down in this semi-truck weird vehicle looking thing that is to technically be seen on the bottom part of the screen here. So so we go on, and now let's focus on Ben. So Ben is, of course, be Jonathan Myers, and he is to be living on this farm where it seems that his FBI pension is paying for it, because it really seems that his father doesn't have the ability to keep this farm alive, because Heath is a gambler and he is to be so addicted to it that he's trying to come up with ways to eventually go out so that way he can try to gamble more. And Ben is just you know what, why don't you just stop? Like, why don't you just stop doing what you're doing? Because Heath at some point is telling Ben that that Ben should really just start fortifying this whole barn and really get a better fencing and stuff. And Heath just says that because it's like, well, because of what's really going on in the world, we need to really defend this barn better. We really need to come up with some kind of way to get people from coming in and stealing what's ours. But that's not really what Heath is really worried about. Eventually, Heath is really just worried about somebody busting his caps or kneecaps. So eventually, Ben and Heath are going out to the forest, eventually wanting to go and shoot some deer. And so Heath is mentioning, like, man, like maybe the disease has gotten into the deer, and so maybe we're not like going to be able to catch any today. Maybe they all got sick. And so Heath is mentioning, like, well, hey, how about we go and just buy some venison? And Ben is just like, you know what? Like, I know what you're doing. You want to just go and find a place that you can gamble again because you can't stop. Like, you can't stop gambling. And because there's no place where you can just buy venison, it's not that easy. And so, like, what are you really trying to do? And so he kind of throws it into Ben's face that Ben wasn't there for Heath's parents' death. That eventually, Grandpa and Grandpa ended up dying. And so Ben is like, well, I was working during that time. I was an FBI guy at that time, and I could not just pull the ripcord on what I was doing there to come back here to just kind of mourn the loss of my grandparents. I couldn't do that. And so then eventually, but Ben throws it in Heath's face that that Heath wasn't there for Ben's mother's death, because Heath was off gambling away while I guess Ben was actually there for his mother's death. So really, like, these people are kind of on an even keel of things. So, but consistently Heath is just like, well, why haven't you fortified the barn yet? And Ben is like, why are you pushing that so much? Like, they are kind of in the middle of nowhere, so, like, why do they really have to fortify everything? Like, people are really going to have to come a pretty long stretch of a way to get to this person, but maybe that might be the one thing that people will eventually do. So, what ends up happening is that the guy that Sarah is with eventually is to die because I guess he had eventually gotten sick. So Sarah makes her way to Ben's farm, and immediately once she makes it there, she just falls asleep and like crashes in this guy's barn. He ends up finding her, and he asks her like, "Hey, are you are you okay? Like, are you sick? Like, hey," as he's holding his like mouth in front of his face. So Ben grabs this girl, chucks her in this bed, and is to just kind of consistently just kind of like try to wake her up at points, but she's out like a light. So uh, eventually, what happens is Aaron, John Malkovich, and his men are to drive their way to this barn, and now there's to be this this kind of wooden like kind of spike thing preventing these people from just easily getting into this barn. So eventually Ben is to go out there with his gun and it's just like, hey, like, what are you guys doing here? And so at first they're just like, well, hey, like, do you have any spare like food or drink or anything like that you can kind of give to us? And Ben is like, no, like, why would I? And so Aaron eventually gets out and is to just start talking to Ben and is to just say, like, well, uh, we're looking for this one girl and like maybe she could have stumbled upon this way and like have you seen this girl? And Ben's like, no, I haven't seen anybody. And so consistently Aaron is to consistently mention that this guy is a liar. Like obviously I can smell his lies from here and this and that, and like he's always going to be a liar. So Aaron is to just mention it's like, well, here's what we're gonna do, because obviously you're just not wanting to budge. Like, we are just gonna go ahead and come through here and burn down your barn, look for this girl, probably find her because we think that you have her, and possibly kill you in the process, and just take all your stuff and leave. Or option B, like option B, like we just like don't burn down your barn and like and then so either way like Ben technically loses and so Ben is like, well, what's option C? And Aaron's like, there is no option C. It's like, well, so eventually what ends up happening is that they just kind of stonewall. It seems that Marley is to be the only one that has a real gun out, and so Ben is not going to put his gun down, even though these guys are supposedly unarmed. Not everyone is unarmed, so he has his gun out. So this whole stretch of dialogue is to go on seemingly for a while. So eventually, what ends up happening is Ben is to start shooting these guys. So they all start going out and they all start firing with their guns. And so Aaron is to mention, it's like, well, hey, like, 4 people should be able to easily take down 1 man. Like, so we should be able to easily accomplish this. And, like, it shouldn't be a problem. But then Aaron ends up getting shot in the leg. John Malkovich's character gets shot in the leg. And it goes down to 3 people. So they end up bashing through this wooden barricade, making it further into this place because Ben eventually runs out of bullets and he runs back into his home. He ends up getting shot in the arm and he ends up forcibly just telling himself to put some dirt into it because that's what his father would have told him. Because I guess that's the old thing that Heath would have said. Because at some point, Heath was to have this like wound across his eye, and so Ben is like, "Oh, well, just put some dirt in it, like you would used to say." So, just showcasing that Heath had been beaten up plenty of times because of his gambling habits. to the point of the reason why Heath is not here in current time is because eventually there was to be a group of guys driving up, and so Heath was telling Ben, it's like, hey, go see what that is. And so Ben is like, no, you go see what that is, because you know that's probably for you. So, like, Ben at this point is like, you have to go and face the music. So Heath goes out there, and so the guys to mention that, like, hey, like, where's my money? Do you have it right now? And Heath is just like, but I'm so close. I'm so close to having the money. It's like, well, that doesn't mean now. So like, that means you're dead. We're going to kill you. So they end up shooting Heath, and then they drive off. And so Ben is to yell at these guys to never come back again. And so he ends up, of course, I'm assuming he ends up burying his father. They don't show that scene. But so Ben is now like putting on a new shirt and eventually just trying to really work that whole shoulder wound thing for a while, or that muscle arm wound thing. And so eventually he's waking this girl up because, like, freaking wake up, woman. Shots are getting fired. So eventually he does get her up, and he ends up telling her to go into this basement and lock the door. So he ends up finally getting her to do that. So eventually Ben just scrapes together whatever bullets he has left, which is not a lot. And funny enough, we end up having, like, I think the one guy is named Owen, who's assuming, oh, if he's going to go and run into that house, I'm sure he's going to have a huge arsenal. Yeah, I'm sure he has, like, just a billion things of food and water and whatever. He's been, like, planning this whole, like, thing happening since, like, 9/11 or 2K, Y2K. I'm sure he just has his own little bunker bombshell thing just planned with, like, years worth of food, because that makes so much sense, right? No, this guy is just kind of scraping by with what bullets he has left, because he didn't stock up on them, because how could you? So Ben is just kind of grabbing whatever bullets he has left in these goofy guns. And so eventually what ends up forcibly happening is the three goons that are left from Aaron's team are eventually going out to try and kind of search for where these people are. And so, interesting enough, the first guy who ends up getting to go and Ben is to find him doesn't even have a name. So this guy's real name is Thaddeus Street. So, okay. So Thaddeus Street is being this one barn, and so eventually what ends up happening is Ben is to kind of jump on top of him, and they easily and quickly run out of bullets, so it's basically just a fighting match. It's a fight out. Of course, Ben is to kind of get kicked in the ribs. It seems like that's a consistent thing in this movie, where they kind of are going for the ribs, or they're going to the stomach a lot. But there's to be this one spot where Thaddeus is to go for this axe, and Ben shoots him and kills him, and only uses one bullet. So that ends up killing that guy. So Ben eventually gets to start strolling into the home. It seems that Owen is to eventually get to this high spot, because evidently Ben is to have this like tower in his barn. So Owen goes up there. Eventually Marley is just kind of circling around. I don't know exactly what she's doing. But then there's to be supposedly another guy named John who's making his way inside this home where coincidentally Ben is to kind of poke his head into. So Ben is to go upstairs and start going through the rooms in the upstairs to eventually get like this door kind of slammed in his face. And so Ben is to eventually fight at this flight of stairs, eventually dropping his gun, running downstairs, eventually to weirdly hold his hands up. Like, oh, don't shoot. Oh, I freeze. Like, this guy's going to shoot you. Luckily, this guy doesn't have any more bullets left, and so they end up having to, again, fight it out. We, of course, have, like, the kicking and the punching in the stomach again for the 18th time, and so we end up just getting a spot where Ben just punches this guy to death. Weirdly punching, like, because I see, like, the punches where, like, this guy is supposedly, where Ben is supposedly punching John. It obviously looks like he's, like, punching him like this, or like this, where, like, obviously the punches aren't going into this guy's face, because why would they? But I think they could have had a better camera angle on that, so it looked more like he's actually punching him in the face. But it just looks like a goofy camera angle that obviously looks like he's not punching him and punching him to death. I don't know. I don't know what the heck they were doing there. I honestly think would have made this a little bit better if Ben would have probably had a knife. Like, at least with a knife, like, because you can justify this person having this big, huge honking knife, and you could probably kill people a lot better that way. Or you would think that everybody during this time would probably have these huge, large knives, because eventually people will run out of bullets justifyingly. You would think people would have machetes or knives or whatever during this time period, because those don't run out of bullets. You can chuck those eventually when you run out of bullets. But not a single one of these people have a knife to their name, and that's what really just bugged the crap out of me. Because I'm used to seeing survival movies where if people run out of bullets, they have at least knives, and you can have some cool knife fighting kind of things going on here. But I guess that's just me, just thinking like how to just do an interesting part of the film where it's still there still seems to be some danger afoot in this film. So eventually Marley is to eventually go back to Aaron that is still stuck in this truck. And so really these lines are just to reiterate what they've already been talking about. Because Aaron goes back into mentioning how, like, well, like, first, when Marley is to make her way walking to the truck, Aaron is to mention, like, I know your exact footsteps. I knew that this was you coming back here. Like, something about, like, her kind of footsteps are very different than anyone else. And I'm like, okay, what is the point of this line delivery? But again, Aaron reiterates that it's like, well, this is 4 people against 1 man, and I'm like, technically it's 3. Well, wait, like, count it out. So 1, 2, 3. Well, I guess technically it's 4 because Aaron is just side saddled. So, I guess it's still technically 4. But, like, so with Aaron technically just stuck in this truck, it would have technically been 5. Like, maybe he could have had a sniper rifle or something on him, but he just does nothing. He just sits in the truck like a sad sack. So, but I get it. Like, I get probably why he's not mixed into the action, because he's freaking John Malkovich. Like, just come up with some cool lines for him to deliver, and then just let him be. But anyways, so because really John Malkovich is not to really be used until like almost everyone is to be taken out, and then he shows himself. So uh, so back into it. So Ben is to consistently keep getting more radio station things. And I think we end up having this girl who is to call herself like Darla or something like that, or like some kind of interesting name instead of her radio station name. And so Lori Petty, who's to be this radio station person, is to eventually mention that like this is towards the end of the movie where she's to mention how like she's the only one really left. She has to figure out how all this radio station stuff works because everyone has left or gotten sick or whatever. So Lori eventually mentions that the president had died. So nobody is really able or is really actually running this country because I guess everyone who could have has died. So basically, Lori is mentioning how the world has basically fallen apart. How basically we've just descended into anarchy and whatever. Because supposedly there's to be this kind of like riot footage where eventually they end up saying that like basically with most of the police officers or anybody who can kind of come in to try and stop this rioting have all been sick or just can't work. So basically it's everyone just running wild and running free because like everyone has just been too sick or no one can make it out to eventually defend this city. Like even if they probably send the National Guard probably won't be there or dwindle down the numbers or whichever. So yeah, so like people can just be anarchists and there's nothing anyone can really do. So kind of to just make sure like I help people understand what is to be presented in this world of just like people can just do whatever the heck they want. There is no law anymore because there just really isn't. So so the radio station person is to mention the president's dead, no one's running the country, and that eventually, like, she is no longer really getting any real, true, legitimate information anymore, and she's just kind of guessing of what's kind of going on. Um, because eventually she's not getting legitimate information right now, because like any person that was giving her this information is probably all gone, so she's just kind of like hopefully this is right. Now, so Ben is to eventually go and talk to this girl and open up this basement door and talk to her. And so she is to mention that she is not like immune to this disease. She's actually just a carrier person that doesn't get sick from this illness. And so Ben is like, so wait a minute, like I could possibly be getting sick right now and I wouldn't even know it. And she's like, yeah, technically. Because evidently, when this girl was to eventually arrive in this part of town, evidently people were starting to get sick, and but she wasn't. So Ben is like, crap, like I figured out a way to try to avoid getting sick from people, but now it's quite possible that I'm going to get sick from this girl. So, and what Aaron was to say wasn't even true about this woman, that she's completely immune and whatever. And so, uh, really now, Ben eventually is to go out and now have to kind of finish up getting some certain characters. So Ben is to eventually go after Marley, who is to kind of go and to try and shoot Ben, and to try to think that she has him cornered and that she can get to him. But really, again, this all eventually just ends up with like Ben headbutting Marley and taking her out. But he doesn't actually kill her. He ends up just kind of tying her up and taping her mouth shut. And he's using her as a bargaining tool. And so then after that, Ben is to realize there's to be a guy at this watchtower. and so he ends up burning up the watchtower and bursting it into flames. And so Owen is to jump down from this watchtower, and so Ben is telling this guy, "Hey, like you don't have to do this. You can just run off into the woods and never look back." And Owen is like, "Well, like I have people that depend on me and whatever, and like it's too late for that now." So eventually Ben has to just kill this guy because everyone has to just die here. So now Aaron has to make his way to, of course, being the last man or last person really just left. Let's just say that. So Aaron makes his way down there, and so now Ben has Marley like kind of in front of him, and so Ben is kind of giving Aaron the same kind of ultimatum of like, hey man, like this girl isn't really who you think she is. Like she's not really immune. She's just like a carrier of this. So like what you're thinking about doing is stupid. So how about you just go and leave here forever, and all this will be done. You can run off with Marley, and you can run off and have babies and do whatever you want, and like whatever this stupid goal of yours was, like you can just forget about all of it. And Aaron's like, well, no, like I was sent on a mission, like from the Reaper or whatever, so like from death, to come back here to do this mission, and I need to fulfill this mission. And so Marley is like, well, you know that I have been a person that has always wanted you to achieve your goal, and like the only way that you're gonna have to achieve this goal is to do it through me. And so Aaron's like, well, that seems quite right. So Aaron goes and shoots Marley. Marley falls over, and so now Ben and Aaron are kind of having to now like kind of fight it out. And so it seems after all of this, Ben eventually gets a gun on Aaron, and so Ben is just like, you know what? Like, I'm not going to let you off this easy by killing you. I'm going to make you just, like, regret all the decisions that you've ever made and live the rest of your life with just the horrific thing that you have manipulated and whatever, all these kinds of people, and blah, 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 blah. But Sarah's not letting Aaron off so easily. So Aaron comes flying out of this barn, and she ends up shooting up Aaron, killing him off. And so now, after this has technically all been resolved, Ben is to be talking with Aaron because it seems like Ben is not on his deathbed right now, and so Ben is to just say like, well, since we have this big semi vehicle thing that's like filled with gas and whatever, how about we just go and eventually just go on a road trip and find out if anyone is to have a cure for this illness? Maybe there's someone who does. Like, I just think that Ben, like, once he now has somebody who is Sarah, I think really he really is just to like go on and be like, well, like I don't want to stay here anymore. Like Ben, I think has been in this barn or been in this farm for way too long, and now that he has someone with him, I think now he's basically just like, well, how about we just get the heck out of here? Because he also doesn't want to have to go and clean up all these dead bodies, and like it seems that eventually Ben was probably thinking that no one would ever find him here, and someone did. So Ben, I guess, is just thinking now, how about we just go on a road trip, because either way we're going to probably die. I guess we're not in the middle of nowhere anymore because these people were to have come to get me. So now it just pushes Ben to eventually uh, be a person that is going to go on a road trip. Oh, I also did not mention Ben was an FBI guy, but the funny thing is that he wasn't actually a real legitimate agent. All that Ben actually did was that he was to help people figure out how to work certain maps that he had put out for certain missions. So this guy would plan certain things for certain people and help them understand certain things, but he wasn't actually an FBI agent that would murder and kill a bunch of people or whatever. Like this guy probably didn't even go through probably the training or whatever for an FBI person, but who knows? Um, Maybe he was just working with the FBI. But he wasn't an actual FBI agent. Who knows? But with that said, I am going to get out of here. I think I've talked for long enough about this one. I'm going to get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.